What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge? Honor? No. It is power. Your limits will be tested. Break them. Do what is thought impossible, and the Atlas will follow.
Path of Exile, Echoes of the Atlas is a new endgame expansion focused around bossing and area control. And to be successful in this expansion, we're going to require builds that excel in these two areas. And in the Challenge League, we're going to be locked into a small arena forced to fight wave upon wave of nasty and difficult enemies. So chances are for this, we're going to require builds that aren't so much focused on clear speed and are more focused on being able to handle small areas of bosses or powerful enemies. My goal is to provide you all 5 powerful builds that will be able to handle both the expansion and the Challenge League with ease. These are going to include full path of buildings, which will be in the description, that include notes about leveling, information about the characters, multiple leveling trees, multiple gear sets, and they should have everything that you need to have a successful league start. Today, the build that we're going to be talking about is the Toxic Rain Trickster. This build can handle most of the content of the game with quite budget gear. However, this is one build that you will need to do a little bit of crafting to be able to pull out the full potential. Now, if that does seem a little bit daunting to you, fear not, because I have all of the information that you'll need, and I'll talk about that later in the video. Now, I know a lot of people have been concerned about some of the ascendancies and all the nerfs that they've received. However, I think the people that are worried about Trickster are kind of blowing it out of proportion. Yes, the Trickster is losing some damage, and it is also losing some spell dodge. However, it is gaining a couple things as well. We're going to be gaining 50% more life and energy shield on kill, as well as obtaining a quite substantial 3% overall damage reduction. Pure damage reduction is pretty rare in this game, so a full 3% is nothing to scoff at. Now, the main reason that I'm suggesting this build is because how efficient it is at bossing. Now, while this build can get insane levels of damage if you just stand in the boss's face, pop down your wither totems, and go to town, that isn't really the main strength of this build. The main strength is the fact that it can do such a large amount of damage while constantly moving and staying safe. If you've played Path of Exile long enough, you know that melee has a huge disadvantage, and that's because the bosses can literally just walk up and smack you in the face. So since we're a range build that can also move while doing our damage, we get some of the best defensive layers in the game, and that's called just not getting hit at all. When I was originally playing this build, it graced me with some of the easiest boss kills that I have ever actually done in the entire time that I've played Path of Exile. It seemed like every single boss we threw at this build, it took it down with no problem whatsoever. And as you know, I really don't push these builds too super far, and with the return of Harvest, we're going to be able to get quite a bit of insane gear, so this build just might be the one that I choose for my personal league start. It's kind of a toss-up between this and Purifying Flame Mines, but we'll see what happens. So if you're massively interested in getting some really juicy maps going and being able to kill these big giant boss arenas that they've tempted us with, then this might be the build for you. So now that I've given you a preview of the build, let's jump into the game and take a little bit of a closer look. Hey guys, Big Ducks here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're enjoying my content, make sure that you like this video so that you can see more of it. Also, over 75% of you are still not subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you want to make sure that you see the latest up-to-date League Start content, make sure that you subscribe so that you can get all of these videos right in your feed. Now, I do want to remind you that there is going to be a playlist up in the top right corner now that has all of my League Start content for 3.13. So if the preview of this build didn't do it for you, check out that playlist and you can maybe find something that's a little bit more suitable for what you're looking to do. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the guide. Alright boys, so if you've made it this far into the video, that means that you're looking for a little bit more information on league starting with the Toxic Rain Trickster. Now this is a build that I can highly recommend. It gives you a bunch of really powerful abilities, and there is a lot that you can learn from this build, simply because it does benefit heavily from being able to craft items, and learning how to craft these items will teach you quite a bit about the game. So let's talk a little about leveling, and the first thing when we're talking about leveling is how easy and straightforward this build actually is to level. You can use Toxic Rain from level 12 all the way to the end of the game. Let's talk about skills. So the first skill that you're going to get is going to be Caustic Arrow. This is actually something that you will use all the way into maps and even possibly a little bit further. The only time that it's really worthwhile to drop Caustic Arrow is going to be when it no longer is needed. I personally do drop this at around when I hit maps because Toxic Rain does start scaling quite well at that point. However, you can keep this for quite some time. So Caustic Arrow is a very simple ability. You shoot Caustic Arrow out, it leaves a little ground effect, and it does some damage over time. Now, this does have two portions to it. There is a hit, and you'll see that it does like 1670 DPS there. That's not what you're worried about. It is the damage over time effect on the ground that ability is actually worthwhile for. So when you combine this with the Pierce gem very early on, it causes it every single time that ability pierces an enemy, it actually drops an additional ground effect. So when you're leveling early on, if you get Pierce and you shoot it through 3 or 4 enemies, it's going to drop 3 or 4 ground effects. Now those don't stack, however, it does help immensely for clear. And then when you're actually done with clear and you need to do some single target, that's when Toxic Rain comes in. Now Toxic Rain is an interesting ability because it has two portions. You saw that there was a shot coming from the sky, and then there was those little pods that dropped on the ground. So Toxic Rain, it does have some damage over time effect that happens just from the initial hit. So when you actually shoot it on the ground, that hit is going to do damage. However, the largest portion of the damage is actually in those pods. So what you'll notice is that when you shoot a whole bunch of times, it'll stack up a whole bunch of pods and you'll start seeing them all pop at the same time, right? This is where the main source of damage of this build comes from. With this particular build, it's good to scale damage over time, it's good to scale chaos damage over time multiplier, it's good to scale attack speed because that does help us get more pods out, and all of those pieces together cause us to do quite a bit of single target damage. Now, Toxic Rain itself can actually just be used for clear as well. I don't personally use Caustic Arrow at any time. Some people split between the two, like they'll do a 6-link in their chest piece and a 6-link in the bow, one Caustic Arrow, one Toxic Rain. I think the Toxic Rain is perfectly fine and capable of clearing all by itself, so I don't think that it's needed. Now, as for actually having items while leveling up, the beauty of this build is you legitimately can use a white 4-link short bow, which is one of the first bow types that you get in the game. That will carry you all the way into maps, no problem whatsoever. This ability scales insanely well just with gem levels and just with links. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that very early on, you just need to be checking the vendors. What you're going to be looking for is you're going to be looking for a 4-link bow, and you're going to be looking for the fastest bow that you can find. Now, if we look at bows here, you're going to notice there's a couple different types. You'll see there's crude bows, and you'll also see that there's these long bows. You don't want to get confused because Toxic Rain in particular does have a DPS portion at the top, right? Once again, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at the chaos damage per second modifier way down there in the actual list. And the idea is that we want to get attack speed. We want to have faster attack speed so that we can stack all of those pods and do more damage. So a bow like this, although it's going to hit a little bit harder, especially early on, we would much prefer something like a crude bow. Now, very early on, you are going to want to find a short bow just because it is a 1.5 attack speed bow. And ideally, you'll want to try to get a 4-link as soon as you can. You will want to 4-link both Caustic Arrow and Toxic Rain. I have links and all of the information about that in the Path of Building, so make sure to go check it out there. Beyond that, the only thing that you really need to worry about while gearing is just staying on top of your life, staying on top of your resist, and you can do that very easily with the crafting bench over here. When you get into Act 2, you're going to save a woman named Helena, and she's going to give you access to a hideout. I suggest that you make the hideout immediately because it's going to give you access to this bench, which will allow you to craft resistances on your gear. You should make sure to be crafting resistances on all of your gear and trying to make sure that your resistances stay at least 75. The difference between, say, having like 60 all res and having 75 all res is a huge difference in damage, so make sure that you stay at 75 of all elemental resistances and try to get at least 0 chaos resist. So I want to talk about the skill tree a little bit, and I also want to talk about the tool called Path of Building. In the description down below, there's going to be a link to the Path of Building community fork. I suggest that you get it. It is one of the most important tools for playing Path of Exile. It is made by one of the people at GGG, and it's maintained now by the community. It is basically just a character builder, and it allows you to test everything that you could possibly want. So we're going to jump into Path of Building so I can show you the skill trees. All right, so now that we're over here in Path of Building, I do want to talk about these skill trees. So you'll see that there's going to be multiple leveling trees here, and we're going to start with the first one. So very early on, this build, like most chaos damage over time builds, is going to come out through chaos damage. We're going to be grabbing life and some damage. These damage over time nodes, we'll grab this life, this damage here, and then we are going to grab these bow nodes here, specifically because these give us damage over time with bow skills, and Hunter's Gambit is a very, very good node. It gives us skill effect duration, chaos damage over time multiplier, and damage over time with bow skills. Everything that we're looking for in a node. And then we're going to be heading down, and we're going to be grabbing some dodge. Dodge is one of the main defensive layers of this build. It's very, very powerful. we're able to scale to max dodge and spell dodge. Now keep in mind, with the changes that we are getting to the Trickster Ascendancy, we're not going to be able to max spell dodge as easily. It's going to require probably a cluster jewel of some sort, or spell dodge on a piece of gear like boots or things like that, but you will still be able to max it, and even if you don't, it's going to be perfectly fine. The other thing to note is that we are going to be having ascendancies, and you should take them in a specific order. Now these will be changing as well. The first ascendancy point that I still suggest that you get is going to be Patient Reaper. In 3.13, Patient Reaper is going to be updated to not have that increased damage over time, however it's going to have more life and more energy shield on kill. This is still an excellent node, and I do suggest that you get it first. And as you go through these trees, you'll notice that it'll tell you the next point to go here. It'll also tell you where to move around on the tree. You'll see we come up here, grab this damage over time multiplier and regeneration. We'll head down, and we're going to head over here, grab some life, grab these bow damage over time nodes as well. This gives us some cooldown recovery of our movement skills, as well as some movement speed and evasion. And then after that, as we move forward, we're going to be grabbing Wind Dancer, which is a huge buff to defensives on a dodge build. And then we're going to head up and get these skill effect duration nodes. This is going to give us a ton of damage on Toxic Rain, as well as some life, some mana regen. We're also going to grab some life here, as well as elusive on kill. And you can see as you go through these trees, you can move up. It'll give you more and more and more. There is a tree that is available with no cluster jewels whatsoever. This is the one that I suggest that a standard player use. And then when you go to this full cluster jewel tree with the Thread of Hope, this is a very end-game tree. It allows you to use a Thread of Hope that drops off of one of the final bosses to be able to put these nodes in here. These are very powerful nodes, and you can skip a whole bunch of travel nodes. And then we do have some rather easy to get cluster jewels. These aren't too expensive actually, especially with having harvest crafting back. This shouldn't be too bad. That's pretty much all that you need to know in here. Keep in mind there's a bunch of extra stuff like notes. I've got all kinds of information, all of the leveling skills, items, everything is all in here, so make sure that you check out Path of Building and figure out how to use it. It'll be one of the best things that you can do while playing Path of Exile. Now let's jump back into the game and talk about a few more things. So now that we're back in the game, I do want to talk about gearing, because this particular build does have some pretty interesting ways to gear, and there are a couple things that you need to know about. So the major thing that turns people off from this build is the spell bow. I want you to know that I do have a full guide on how to craft this bow. It even tells you how to get the extra crafts that you see at the bottom there. It tells you absolutely how to do everything. I'm going to link it up in the top right corner now, so take a look at that video if you want help crafting this bow. It's not as daunting of a task as you might think it is. It does need a couple exalts to be able to craft it, because the crafted modifiers as well as socketed gems require exalts. However, beyond that, this isn't that hard of a bow to craft, I promise you. Until then, you can use a 6-link silver bow. It's really not that bad of an idea. Even just a 5-link silver bow will probably carry you through most of the game, so you can look for that. As for the rest of the gear here, I talked about it earlier. Non-channeling skills have negative mana cost is really powerful for this build. If you need help getting these crafts, there's probably someone in my Discord that can help you get them. If you need these very early on, check out the PoE questions section. The Discord is linked down in the description. There's probably someone there. Make sure that you tip them. A lot of people spend a bunch of time getting these crafts, so make sure that you give them a little bit, maybe like a chaos or two at least. We're just getting some random stuff. We're looking for chaos damage over time multiplier if we can get it. If you are using the Cinder Swallow urn, keep in mind that some added fire damage will actually allow you to make use of the 10% increased damage taken here. It is actually quite good, and that's the main reason that I use this flask. It's Onslaught. It's got some more life, energy shield, and mana gain on kill, and it also does give you that 10% increased damage taken, which is pretty big. The Dying Sun, as I said earlier, it just gives you additional projectiles, which means that you get additional of those pods on the ground, and it gives you some area, which helps the pods overlap. Beyond that, we do use Kintsugi. Kintsugi is very easy to get early on. There's actually a prophecy that you can use for Kintsugi. You can look it up and find it on the wiki, but this scales very well with our dodge. You don't need this linked. You just need to get any Kintsugi. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not going to be insanely expensive after a couple of days, because this isn't that hard to get. Like I said, there's a prophecy for it, so make sure to check that out. And the last piece of gear is going to be Ace in this chant. This is not required whatsoever for the build. It is very good, and it does give you trigger a socketed spell when you attack with a bow. Now keep in mind, we do have our Curse, Contagion, Void Sphere, and Essence Drain in here. Now, the main reason that this is good is because of the Curse. We're just going to be getting an auto curse on all of the enemies, and because of Essence Drain. And we don't actually use Essence Drain here for the damage. We use this to just help with some recovery. So when you apply Essence Drain to an enemy, it regenerates 0.6% of the debuff damage's life, and when we have Contagion and Essence Drain auto-casting, it means that we're going to be putting that on everything around us, giving us some extra regen. And then on top of that, for difficult packs, or say enemies that have like really nasty on-death effects, or you don't want their corpses to be there, this is really, really nice because it's going to hinder enemies. It's also going to like pull them and suck them in so that you don't have to worry about them moving around all over the place. I swapped this in instead of Soul Rend. Someone in chat had suggested it to me, and it's a very, very good idea. Other than that, the build does not require any crazy gear. However, as I said, we're going to have harvest crafting back, so you're going to be able to get some of this gear a lot easier. You can probably even get a Despair on hit ring pretty easily. We do use Aspect of the Spider. Remember that you can just buy the actual spider beast itself. We're getting some crazy Einhar buffs. If you haven't heard, there's going to be like a map skill tree that you can get where it just spawns like 40 beasts inside of a map at one time. It's gonna be nuts, absolutely. So the beast should be a little bit cheaper to get, so that should be pretty easy to come by. And yeah, not too hard to gear, and when you do actually scale the gear, it does quite well. Alright, so as always, I do want to show you guys a map. We are going to be doing a tier 16 map again. We're going to be using 4 Scarabs. We're going to be using Polished Torment, Elder, Perondus, and Harbinger. We are also going to be running Delirium on this. This is a tier 16 on Awakener 8, and we are going to be using 4 Sextants that have a bunch of extra enemies added to them. So this should be pretty interesting. This build is really powerful, and I do want to show off once again. We'll do some tier 16 Delirium in a lair map so you guys can get an idea of how powerful this build is once you invest a little bit into it. So let's get going. This build is very powerful simply because you can move very efficiently while killing things. Now, I do want to note that my internet's been pretty bad, and if you guys had watched me over on stream, it's been cutting out quite heavily. So you'll see here every once in a while my character is just going to freeze, so hopefully we can actually survive without having any internet issues. Comcast said they're fixing it, but what can you do? I'm sure if you guys have ever dealt with Comcast before, you know it's like pulling teeth. So our lag is actually pretty terrible right now. But anyways, you can kind of see how the build does, even with the latency, even with the lag, even with the inability to move around sometimes. We're still able to clear this absolutely like it's nothing. We're in a T16 map. Full Delirium. I mean, I'm kind of just standing inside of the enemies occasionally and not really having too many issues. Most things die with a tap, and if it doesn't die in one tap, it's normally only 2 or 3 at most. That is a 4 essence mob. Actually kind of want to fight this. So 4 essences does make this pretty tanky, but as you can see, not having too many issues whatsoever. So yeah, the build, when you do decide to do single target damage, if you just stand there and actually hit the enemies, does quite well. However, as I said previously, that's really not the strength of this build. It's not just the... Okay, it's not the lag either. Thank you, Comcast. Appreciate you. If you would let me move around in my tier 16 Delirium map, that would be wonderful. The power of this build is the fact that you can move very, very easily through enemies and still do damage because of Mirage Archer. And as you can see, we're clearing this map with no problem. I haven't even really taken very much damage yet, to be honest with you. Even with the lag and even with the Delirium and everything, I mean, we're really not taking very much damage at all. So let's see if we can actually get through this boss. But the playstyle of this is very, very simple. You run around, you hit Toxic Rain, you keep moving, you find Exalted Orbs. That's definitely a part of the build, and I think that's the first time that's actually happened when I've just randomly been running around doing a build video. So there's a first time for everything, huh? But we need to clear this out a little bit before we really start doing damage here. We do actually slow a decent amount as well because of Aspect of the Spider and such. So you can see we keep him relatively slow, even though he does quite a bit of damage and we're in the Delirium. Let's get him finished off. Ooh, yeah, okay. We stood in the thing because I got locked in place because Comcast sucks and I couldn't move my character, but what can you do? 31 Simulacrum Splinters. Once again, thank you, Comcast, for not letting me play my character. But you can kind of see, as long as we literally don't just like stand in bad stuff for 30 seconds, I had no issues running through the entirety of that map whatsoever. Absolutely breezed through it, no problem. Like I said, the build, very, very solid. This was full Sextants. We actually spawned a Warlord on there as well. So we had lightning damage, chaos damage, poisons, and magic monster pack size. T16 lair map with Delirium on it, with everything. complete breeze. I really, really like this build. I was very impressed when I originally started playing it. This might be my league starter, actually. We'll see what happens. I'm not 100% set yet. There may be something that, you know, comes out of the woodwork and we'll see what happens, but very powerful build. I enjoy it quite a bit, and I hope some of you guys give this a try, because it's a really powerful build. And that is going to be the end of the guide. Now, if you have further questions about this or any of my other builds, make sure that you join my Discord. The link is in the description down below. There is a PoE questions section that has a ton of helpful people that would be happy to help you with all of your questions. Keep in mind, during League Start, it may be quite busy, so if you do have answers to other questions, make sure that you help out other people as well. Also, if you want to catch me theory crafting some of these builds live, make sure to follow me over twitch.tv/bigducks. I'm going to be live every day all the way up till the release of the 3.13 League, and then we will be pushing pretty hard right upon League Start, so make sure that you come and hang out with your boy. So that's going to be it, guys. Thank you for watching the video. I hope that you have a wonderful League Start, and remember, if you enjoy my content, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this, and stay safe out there in Ray class. And I'll see you guys in 3.13 Echoes of the Atlas.